All right, man. I tell you what, if somebody's listening to this in an audio format, they're not seeing your flashy new background. Let us know what's going on, man.
Well, it's not new. It's actually old. What's old becomes new again. These are all some of my T-shirt collection that have been in storage for a little while from affiliates that I've either visited or been in touch with the owners or the managers. And I got them set up in the barn. So we got the barn gym going now, and I'm pretty excited about that. It's just got enough amenities to like make it sort of viable. We have almost power. It's kind of hillbilly rigged for now.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of bare walls, but we've dressed it up just enough to make it good.
And so far, so good with the Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
right? The signal's strong. I mean, you look loud and clear.
Hey, the important part is I didn't fall off the roof setting it up. So that was the
Exactly. That's cool, man. Well,
yeah.
it should be a great backdrop. Many more shows to come from there. So I'm happy for you. It's been a long process.
Thanks, man. Yeah, pretty excited about it.
Well, we got a good one today, but before we jump into it, I'll do the housekeeping as normal. Appreciate everybody, your support for the show. And if you want to help support the show, go to verynotrandom.com and you can get some things that will just help hopefully propel your fitness forward. We have on-ramp programs for barbell, dumbbell, and body weight if you're kind of new to the game and want to learn some stuff. Then if you've been around for a while and you're looking to unlock some skills, there's a whole bunch of Get Your Firsts program. Get Your First strict pull-up, kipping bar muscle up, strict ring muscle up, handstand walk, handstand push-up, all kinds of stuff. Check that out. Then of course the barbell stuff everybody loves, so clean, deadlift, back squat, all that, check that out. If you're a gym owner, you got to do all the logistical behind the scenes stuff that keeps your gym running, hopefully gives you more free time, workout tracking, gym management, and billing. btwb has an all-in-one solution for that, so it doesn't matter what kind of gym you have. CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, who knows what you got. Go to btwb.com and check that out. So today's show, I don't even know why I'm here, to be quite honest with you. This is, the person even just didn't even mention me in it. Just like, it was all Boz. So here's the question from Tony too. What would be some fitness things in the fringe nowadays? I'd be interested in what Boz would consider out there and if it has changed much over the last 20 years. So, what maybe is considered fringe these days? And I guess you've identified yourself as an enthusiast of fringe culture. I scratched down some stuff that I don't think it's fringe right now, where these are things that I hope become fringe.
It's funny, categorically, I had the same thing. I sat down and started thinking about this, and I was like, man, I've been immersed in CrossFit for so long at this point that I don't know that I am really in touch with what would be considered fringe by kind of fitness industry standards these days. And so I kind of started with three categories. I used to be fringe category, which is now kind of mainstream. A kind of fringe category where I think some people might have had some touch base with some of these elements, but maybe not fully. And then a should be fringe category.
Okay, that's the one I got.
So it's kind of funny that we thought about it the same way. But I guess this kind of stemmed from a conversation we were having, I don't know how many episodes ago, where, it's kind of interesting to stick with something so long where you see it started really on the peripheral. I mean, CrossFit, when it started, really was kind of in your face, antithetical to what was going on in the fitness industry at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so much so to the point that people would just get angry if you said that you did CrossFit. There was like this emotional reaction.
Insinuated that it might work pretty well.
Yeah, there was one of two things. It was either like, I've never heard of this. What is this thing? And I don't care. Or an immediate kind of negative reaction because it was just so kind of out there. Anyway, fast forward a couple decades and now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, maybe people don't like CrossFit, the entity, or like they have their gripes about some specific details. But at the end of the day, nobody refutes that learning to power clean is something that most people should be doing. Nobody refutes that, like, hey, mixing some of these things together for general fitness purposes can really accelerate your progress. That's kind of accepted at this point.
Just
even
strength
if it's
training, right? Like getting barbells into people's hands.
Yeah, and we're talking, to be clear, about populations that are not traditionally thought of as athletes. It's always been the case that you go to like a college strength and conditioning weight room, and like, okay, you're going to see some things that are a little bit different than what you might find at the local Gold's Gym. However, these days, what we're talking about is the regular Jane and Joe. That's where the difference lies, right? Like, it was not that long ago where if you suggested that, hey, Pat, your sister at 45 years old should learn some of the basic barbell movements, people would look at you like, why? Why would she ever want to do that? Whereas now it's like, of course you would want to learn to squat. Why wouldn't you?
Oh, so 100%. I mean, I remember just way back growing up in high school, there was a Gold's Gym about 20 minutes from where I lived, and me and some buddies we lived at Gold's Gym during the high school years. And everyone did the same movements. That's why there was a line at the regular stuff. And I would have been like seeing an alien back then if I saw somebody doing even like a hang power clean, like whipping a barbell around from their waist to their shoulders over and over again. Like nothing like that ever. There's no velocity. There was no explosion. It was, and if somebody was doing a squat, it was most likely on the leg press machine, or it was in the, what is it called? The Smith machine.
Yes.
Right? Like maybe, but that was it. But somebody unracking, 3 45-pound plates in each side, stepping out and doing some squats. I don't think I saw that once in my entire 4 years going to that place. So times have changed.
And if you were engaged in some sort of quote unquote hardcore training, the response from people in those environments was always, what are you training for? The answer of well, I just want to be generally fit and healthy. That was never an acceptable answer. It was no, you have to be doing something. What do you train? What is your sport?
Going into the British SAS or something.
Right, exactly. They wouldn't buy it if you just said that this is what you do to stay generally fit and healthy.
Trying to stay trim.
Yeah, so let's narrow it down a little bit. This is my used to be Fringe list, and I think a lot of it is kind of what we talked about already. I mean, weightlifting, specifically the snatch and the clean and jerk.
100%.
And specifically talking in North America at a commercial facility, that was really Fringe to see, the equipment even available to do it properly. I mean, bumper plates in a commercial facility, no way.
Absolutely not.
They weren't there. The space to do it, you didn't see platforms. They were, like you said, they were attached to, a $20,000 piece of equipment like a Smith machine. There was no open platform to perform these lifts in most gyms.
Nobody's dropping barbells.
Yep. And then the movements themselves, outside of, again, people that were really training for a specific purpose, like competing in Olympic weightlifting, which is super rare, you never saw people do snatches and clean and jerks and derivatives. It was just a non-starter. So that, I think, is something that's one of the more obvious examples of man, you turn the clock back not so far, and that was so outside, and now it's pretty accepted that most people are going to have some sort of brush in with those lifts at some point, even if they choose not to pursue them.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I was interviewing somebody. I think our oldest member in Linchpin. She lives over in New Zealand. She's 69 years old, and she's doing squat cleans. 69 years old doing squat cleans, and it's she would have been considered an absolute raving lunatic, years ago, where people her age aren't doing anything remotely close to that. Who cares what the loading is? And now the culture has shifted oh, you want to be fit, fast, and strong? Movements like this, almost regardless of your age, they're going to have some real benefits. So it's very cool to see how that's turned.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, sorry, I dropped my.
Ooh, look at that. Hey, you got the new setup, man.
What's that?
Said you get the new setup. We're still working it out here for the barn.
Sorry, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties. I can't hear you. Oh man, sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, perfect.
I got the new barn set up,
That's what I was saying. We're learning as we go here.
Yeah. Apologies to the listeners and the viewers. Well, I was going to say, kind of my second big category was basic gymnastics. And I think that that's something that's easy to overlook because there are some staples that have been the backbone of many legit programs for a long time. Push-ups, dips, pull-ups. I don't think anybody is going to look at those movements and bat an eye even 20, 30, 50 years ago, right? But you start talking about more dynamic gymnastics movements, adding a kip to anything. That's something that was just I mean, it's still controversial to a lot
But
of
it
people,
was, but it was so taboo that it wasn't
never
even.
see it.
It was only labeled as cheating. There could be
Correct.
no
Yeah.
potential athletic benefit.
Yeah, or it was not at all understood that that was a deliberate technical choice to perform
Right.
the movement in that way. So that's one. I think movements like rope climbing, any sort of handstand movement, toes to bar, things of that nature that are just kind of basic gymnastics movements, those were pretty fringe. And I think in the commercial facility, they still probably are, but the fact that you can have thousands of people all over the world, like learning to walk on their hands for the first time at 37 years old, for example, I mean, that
Right.
was unheard of not too long ago.
Yeah, I would
and in
agree
my
with that.
opinion, I still think that that's kind of an untapped resource. I think there's still plenty to explore there, but the fact that there is so much more exposure to that, you can see rings hanging in many, many facilities these days. That's kind of
Oh yeah,
mind-blowing.
that's very cool too.
Yeah, so that was my second one, was just these basic gymnastics categories. And then the third one, I think, is maybe a little surprising to some people, and that's some of the kind of basic staple machines that I think have come to be pretty ubiquitous. So like a rowing machine, for example. I remember that it was rare to walk into a facility, and this is certainly geographically different, like in some regions of the world where rowing is more of an accepted sport, you would see
Sure.
that more regularly. But generally speaking, it was really rare to walk into a hotel gym or a commercial facility and see a rowing machine available at all. And now, I mean, they're everywhere.
Everywhere,
you
which
walk
is
into-
so wonderful.
Exactly. And I'll say the same thing about the kind of Airdyne style air bike. Those were kind of a lost to time style relic. They were really famous with wrestlers and kind of combat sport athletes, but they were really reserved for these kind of dungeon gym style training places where, again, it was like wrestlers and kind of athletes in that realm who were maybe too familiar with these pieces of equipment. But for the rest of us, they were kind of like legends. You couldn't really find them unless you happened to be within one of those sports. And now, again, that's one of the things that you see all the time. I mean, I see them on like TV being advertised, so it's kind of interesting how they've come back full circle, and rightly so. I mean, it's a great piece of equipment.
But I'll tell you what, it's so funny hearing that list, and man, when you think that, like most of my growing up and my dabbling in fitness then didn't involve those very things that you just said, because they were fringe, they were outside.
Yeah.
And man, when you think about it these days through the lens and what we know, like no wonder so many of us had such huge gaps in our fitness and so much development and growth once we started incorporating it. I mean, imagine if you talk to somebody like, yeah, I work out all the time. And then you found, okay, they work out all the time, but they're not doing like strength training with compound movements. They have no real explosion or high power output in anything they're doing. They haven't really tapped into any like level of difficulty with basic gymnastics, and they've never heard of an air bike or a rower. You're like,
Yeah.
we got so much good stuff ahead of you. I mean, that's amazing. So it's crazy to think back to those days.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my next category was like the kind of still fringe category. And kind
Curious
of
to see what this is.
Yeah, I've got like three big ones in there. And the first two kind of lumped together, that would be kettlebells and powerlifting derivatives. So like everybody's familiar with squat, bench, and dead, and like overhead press, things like that. But I think powerlifting as a discipline is still maybe even more fringe than Olympic lifting. And particularly some of the techniques, like the partial techniques, the different kind of conjugate techniques in particular. But just some of the specifics around that, I think, are a pretty deep rabbit hole that are still pretty fringe in a lot of places. I mean, you talk to somebody who's a hardcore powerlifter about some of the routines that they do, and it's like they're rattling off exercise names to you as if they are commonplace, and you've never heard any of these words put together in the same sentence ever before. So, and that's even if you're familiar with some of this stuff. There's new exercises invented every single day with some of those athletes. So that would be one big one that I think is still pretty fringe when you get into the depths of it. And then kettlebells I link in there too, because to me it's kind of an interesting trajectory where the kettlebell, you see them everywhere now, right? Like you can go to Target and buy a cheap kettlebell. Wouldn't recommend it, but you could do it, Whereas previously it just wasn't possible to find them outside of like a few obscure websites. But what I will say is that I think most people's approach to the kettlebell as a training tool is really limited. And so like the real essence and kind of understanding of like, okay, what is kettlebell sport? What are some other things you can do with this besides swing it? I think that kind of gets lost. So despite the fact that they're kind of everywhere, people still haven't really embraced the range that tool is capable of. So it's still kind of fringe in my opinion, despite the fact that you kind of see them everywhere.
What is the gentleman's name who's the kettlebell expert that we had on?
Dennis, yeah.
Okay, his name escaped me for a second. Yeah, that was, I mean, people should go back and check out that and, dive into his website if you want to go down some kettlebell rabbit holes there.
Yep.
And then they got me thinking, for future guests for the show, have we had somebody on who's just a dedicated power lifter? I know we've had Olympic lifters, we've had gymnasts, but like just a power lifter.
It's a good question. We might not have.
And one's not jumping into my mind right now. So, hey, so anybody listening right now, I always say this at the end, but if you've got an idea of somebody who'd be a fantastic powerlifting guest to get on and just dissect what they do, how they do it, and to learn from them, leave that down there in the comments because I'll try to track them down.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, and then I guess my other one on that list is strongman stuff. Again, I think strongman is kind of come into its own as something that is certainly way more visible than it used to be. It used to be like about as fringe as it ever got. It was, and like marketed as such, it was definitely kind of had a freak show element to it. That was part of the fun. Nowadays, there's way more going on in the strongman world. And I do think that the majority of people that are interested in like CrossFit, they've had some kind of brush with certain strongman aspects. They've had their hands on like a stone or a tire. Yep. They've lifted a sandbag at some point. They've dragged a sled or pushed a sled. And these are all kind of derivatives of strongman training. But I still think that, like, again, much like powerlifting, that kind of hardcore approach to strongman is still pretty fringe. And I still think pretty understood by most people that aren't directly involved with training it.
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to have on Jerry Pritchett as well as Lawrence Chalet we've had on as well. And they're both legends in the sport. And strongman is one of those things that I've only recently got exposure to, largely through the Rogue Invitational. And man, I find it fascinating to watch the strong men and the strong women. Like it holds my attention, and especially like since we lift things, regularly and what we do for working out, that you just see some of the lows and you have such an appreciation for how much it actually weighs, and they're just whipping it around. Those people are just insane. So yeah, strongman, very, very cool for sure.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
largely still getting more light, but still kind of fringe for sure when you compare it with some of the other big sports.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leaves us at what is truly fringe these days. And then our last category of like what should maybe move into being fringe, either be fringe again or like maybe it should never have been in the limelight in the first place.
You got my interest peaked. I want to see what's truly fringe now, in your opinion.
I still think that there's some oddball implements that never really caught on for whatever reason, like club bells, mace swinging, things like that. Like maybe some people have an inkling of what that stuff is, but like there are whole worlds of systems built around tools like that. And people get really into it. They fall right into that deep end of those particular implements. And there's many of those. I mean, club bells are an obvious one that I think people are a little more familiar with. But there's a few that kind of go down that road. And then you can start looking into kind of like specialty strengths. That's always a category that I think is kind of fringe and probably always will be, because it attracts a certain type of person that's really hyper-focused on one thing. And a great example of that is like the grip training world.
I was thinking grip, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Like there are some really interesting people that are drawn to specifically, I'm just gonna get my hands and forearms as strong as humanly possible, and I kind of don't care about much else. Mm-hmm. and there are all manner, there are hundreds of different methods and devices and tests that people come up with to challenge that one particular aspect of strength, which is like hand and grip strength. So that to me is always kind of fascinating, how far into it people get and often don't care about much else. They're like, yeah, cardio, don't really care. Yeah, like it'd be great to be a little stronger in my other lifts, but like honestly, I just want to roll a frying pan into a pancake.
Right. This person I've got somebody who pops into my head as being great at CrossFit, loving strongman, but also having a particular sparkle in their eye for
Yeah.
grip. You know who I'm thinking of?
No, tell me.
Curtis Bowler.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember he used to have, and he'd travel with him, those like captains of crush.
Oh yeah.
Those
Yeah.
those grippers there, like the chrome with the black spring. And however far they would get, I mean, he was like legitimate. He could close
Yeah.
a very large number of those things. He had some bear paws on him, and he liked working that grip strength. It was crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still the case, but for a while there, the company that made those, they would issue you a certificate if you could prove that you could close them, and they had like a whole protocol that you had to document it correctly, and but they would they would recognize you because it was such a short list of people that could actually do it. I don't know if that's still the case.
That's pretty
but
cool. That's pretty
yeah,
cool,
it was
though.
pretty cool. Yeah, and then the last thing I'll kind of touch on there again, I touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but I do think that gymnastics is one of those realms that people can and should be a little more exploratory. I think that's one of the biggest shortcomings of like CrossFit as it has become codified in many people's minds is that, okay, there's a certain subset of movements that you do and you get really good at that and then you don't really do much else because that's what's asked of you in your workouts or that's what's asked of you if you choose to compete. But in my mind, I'm like, dude, that you're kind of missing so many fun things to explore, number one. And number two, there are some great benefits to some of these movements that may not make sense in a workout structure or may not make sense in a competitive structure, but they absolutely have a ton of utility as far as keeping you in the game and learning some new skills and filling up some holes in the fitness. So I do think there's still some room there for gymnastics to be less fringe.
Just the ability to just move your body weight. It's amazing how strong you can get if you just try to get good at moving your body weight.
Yeah.
What's the proper word for that? Is it planche or like what's the
Planche, yeah.
Plants and levers.
Yep.
I'm gonna forget the guy's name. I'm so embarrassed. I'm forgetting it right now. But a long time ago, when I did work for CrossFit, we filmed this series of gymnastics movements in front of the white wall with this gentleman who was like an Olympic, like legitimate Olympic gymnast on the rings. I can't remember his name right now, but he's the one in all the videos that if you watch the levers and just V-ups and all this kind of stuff, and the level, he was yoked beyond human comprehension, especially like seeing him in person, like biceps and triceps. And you would think that all he did all day long was, bicep curls and dumbbell kickbacks. Of course, never did any of that kind of stuff. It was just him moving his own body weight slowly and in static positions. There's so much physical dominance that you can develop if you embrace some of those movements. Even at the, if there's a 15-step sequence to get to whatever it is, a lever, a planche or whatever, and you can only do step one, but it feels like you're doing Fran because it's so hard, like there's value there. So yes, I think there's probably a lot of untapped potential in the world of gymnastics.
Yeah, and you said it right there. I mean, static holds there's a whole world there of just even basics. I mean, just holding the pull-up position at the top, with load, without load, whatever, maintaining a good posture during that, all manner of L-sits, the basics of support positions on the rings. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff there that may seem like it's just kind of basic, and sure it is in the scheme of things if you're talking to like a legit gymnast. But there's a ton of training utility there, and it's not flashy. It's not going to turn any heads, and you're not going to put it in the middle of a workout with 400-meter runs and whatever else. It doesn't really make sense in that context, but man, it's great stuff to play around with.
And it's going to test your patience because you're probably not going to notice a big gain next week.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you're going to have to stick with it for the long haul. But if you do, you'll be a unique human being.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the fun stuff. What do you wish was Fringe?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm going to start broad. Yeah, I think I'm going to start broad. I wish that it was Fringe. After all this talk about gymnastics and you should dig in and do this and the other, I'm gonna present a cautionary tale, Pat, which is, I think with anything, it's easy to find a kind of pet interest, and then you dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and the human brain wants to convince you that it is now the most important thing because it's what you spent your time on. And without knowing it, you can get so deep into one of these holes that you've stopped doing all of the other big building blocks, and all you want to talk about and all that you believe is worthwhile is whatever pet topic that you've kind of found yourself falling in love with. And so that, to me, I think should be moved back to the fringe. It's easy to find this, like, I have this obscure animal-based movement system that absolutely everybody should do. And if they don't, their posture is going to be ruined for the rest of their life. And how could they possibly ever stay mobile into their 80s if they don't do exactly this fringe thing that nobody's heard of? Mm-hmm. People fall off that cliff, and then they forget that, oh, I still have to like put the work in on my power clean. Oh, I still have to like maintain my pull-up count. Oh, I still need to go for a run every once in a while. And that to me gets old because you see it happen time and time again. It's just a cyclical thing.
Yes. Well, I've got a handful.
Okay.
How many do you have?
I've only got a couple, but again, my broad point was the one that was really important to me. So I'm curious. You go first. I bet you there's a lot of overlap. So,
well, yeah. And this is something that you and I you've just been kind when we're offline. You're just like rant about something that bothers me for 2 or 3 minutes. And this is like stuff that I see, like I said online before, with like celebrity trainers or social media influencers that are just basically, they get somebody, and heaven forbid, the worst thing is that they get somebody in Hollywood, they get somebody with a big media presence, they get somebody who's famous, and they legitimately like do a significant body transformation in the person. Like, it's not smoke and mirrors. Like, they lost a ton of weight, they got more muscle mass, like their blood work improved, like the proof's there, cool. But then the protocols that they tell you were needed to do that, that's where I hope these things become fringe, because I won't mention any names, but these examples apply to multiple people, and every time I see it, it's like a knife turning in my stomach. Things like extra hydrogen in your water. You have to buy this, device that will pump, because regular hydrogen, the H2O is not good enough. You need more hydrogen in there, and that, you know what? That's what made my client from going 75 pounds overweight to being ripped. I tend to think that's not what it was. They'll say they did that. They'll do some sort of like red light therapy. They will do this sounds to me like such nonsense, but they'll do something they call grounding or earthing. Have you heard of this?
I have heard of this.
Okay,
yeah, you just gotta, basically it means walk around barefoot. Yeah,
walk around barefoot, and supposedly what happens here is you get more in touch with the free electrons that the earth gives out, and it neutralizes inflammation. Okay, so they'll be doing the hydrogenated water, walking around barefoot, doing all this other stuff, and then like down the list you find out they say it as if all these things have equal weight in the outcome that it produced for their client. And then you hear like 6 or 7 things down the list. Oh, by the way, we significantly cleaned up their nutrition. Like, instead of just eating junk, they're actually eating highly, whole foods, clean foods, unprocessed, and they're eating them in the right portions. So okay, I tend to think that moved the needle more than the barefoot part. And then like on top of that, we've got them on like a strength and conditioning regime that makes sense. Like they're doing compound movements, they're doing resistance training, and oh, by the way, we're making them work hard when they do it. It's like, okay, you gave me like this list of 10 things, 8 of which were just largely nonsense, and the last 2 were eating the way that somebody who cares about health should, and I'm doing things that make sense in the gym. All right, the other 8, I wish were just fringe nonsense, because there's going to be a lot of folks, they're going to swipe their Visa card, and that's money they could have used to buy higher quality food and a weight set for their garage. Yeah. And so some of that stuff, I hope becomes more fringe, and I hope that nutrition and hard work in the gym become not fringe.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And it's funny because anybody who is into some of those fringe things, they won't even hear you when you say, hey, I'm not even refuting whether this is a good or bad thing. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of that in what we're talking about,
I bet it's wonderful to walk outside on the sunny day in the grass with the bare feet.
Sure.
It's a wonderful experience.
Who doesn't enjoy that on a spring day, Pat? But the contention is, is that the most significant factor? Is that a significant factor, or is that just the cherry on top? It's the old pot roast analogy, man. I'm going to sit down to a nice pot roast. I got all the ingredients, a big quality piece of beef. I got my potatoes and my carrots and all the good stuff to make the gravy. And then I got my spice. That spice is great. The meal might not be complete without it, but ain't nobody sitting down to a big old bowl of spice, Pat. It's just not helping you. You're not.
No, yeah.
So.
And I tend to think it's the fact that this person is now working out and not just stuffing Doritos into their face all day long. I tend to think that's what it is more than the barefoot walk at sunset. But anyway, what else did you have?
One of mine is just, it's going to be a catch-all. It's probably going to ruffle a few feathers, but just mobility systems generally. I think that, hey, man, there's nothing wrong with trying to improve your range of motion, both actively and passively. That's awesome. I think it's completely discounted how much learning some of these big compound movements does for you. And when you approach those with a technical mindset and you're really doing the diligence, that is going to do the lion's share of your quote unquote mobility work. Sure, you can add some supplemental stuff in there, but people want to believe that that supplemental stuff is the stuff that really drives the needle forward. And oftentimes it's not. It's the fact that you're actually exposed to these positions through a full range of motion in real time with load that has the most significant contributing factor. So I think that's one that people can really fall down the rabbit hole, and they convince themselves that in order to ever get more flexible or more mobile or in a better position, that they have to go out and buy 6 specialty devices, each with 10, specialty exercises that come along with it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, it just ain't that complicated most of the time. And sure, a little, like I said, the mousetrap will go off in their brain and they will hear in that, oh, Boz doesn't think that there should be anything outside of just doing the lifts. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there's diminishing returns with a lot of that stuff. And if you're spending 90 minutes a day rolling around on the ground and doing whatever it is you need to do, and you're spending 20 minutes a day putting the work in on some of these other elements, I don't think that's the right pie slice of where you should be attributing your time. So,
well, we'll let the internet in the comments sort that out.
Yeah, Boz hates mobility. That's just the way.
Well, I think that was a nice trip. I hope for Tony too, who wrote this question in. I hope that we at least touched on some of the things you were interested in when you asked what would be considered fringe. I mean, come on, you got what would be considered fringe, what should be considered fringe, what used to be. I mean, covered a lot of ground here, so it should be good to go. Maybe we'll end with anything fun. Have you done any spicy workouts or any good workouts recently that pop into mind?
Brother, I will be honest with you. The last workout I did was a couple days ago. It was the final open workout, and I am still feeling it. So it's been a lot of chores around the old barn, but nothing dedicated. So I do need to get something in. But that last open workout really kicked my butt. It's fun.
I'll give everybody one because I think everybody enjoys a nice trap. And this is one I think when you hear it, I think even potentially as like a more veteran crosser, you'd be like, that doesn't sound like much. It's very simple. Couldn't be simpler, boss. You're going to do, it's 2 rounds for time.
Okay. Oh boy. First and a last. I love it.
18 dumbbell push press.
Okay.
12 calories on the air bike.
Oh boy.
Okay, that's it. You rest 4 minutes.
Okay.
And then you do it one more time. The push press go from 18 to 15, but the calories stay the same, 12. So it's 2 rounds of 18 push press, 12 cals, rest 4 minutes, 2 rounds of 15 push press, 12 cals on the air bike. My recommendation for the dumbbell loading is a lot of people who have been working out for a while, pair of 50 pounders for men, pair of 35s for women would be good. I would say select a set of dumbbells that on that first set of 18 in the initial couplet, you can absolutely go unbroken for the 18, but you're a little bit unhappy about it. You're unhappy that you did, in the second set of 18, you shouldn't be able to go unbroken. And if you did, you pedaled like a coward. So when you hop on the air bike, you have to act like your family and loved ones are being held hostage, and your effort on the air bike is what's going to release them. If you do that, report back your experience in the comments. I think you'll really enjoy it.
I love it.
I
might try that
received-
one this afternoon. We'll see.
This is only working a while. I've received like a couple of text messages and phone calls from people I haven't heard from a while who are just like, dude, what's your problem? Like that was, so I was like, good.
Right in the sweet spot.
Good, yep. So if you're looking for one that doesn't look that bad on paper, check that out. So, okay. All right, everybody. We appreciate you. We took a question today. So all of your questions, comments, topics, they drive where the program's going. It's your program, not ours. So we want to hear from you. Find the show on the btwb YouTube channel. Post your thoughts or comments on this topic, or do you have a future topic that you want to address? Post it there. Do you have a powerlifter that we should interview? Post their credentials and name there, and I'll check them out. If you want to do it publicly, that's one way, or you can go to the Very Not Random Instagram account, post a comment there, or you can send a direct message to the Very Not Random Instagram account, and then you'll be anonymous and you'll be good to go. And that's it. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.